actually like camping? All right? Anyone here just not like camping? Just don't like it. All right, some people just don't like camping. That's un-American. We love to camp. We like to camp. We have all kinds of tents, and we have a pop-up camper, and we like to go backpacking and do all those things. We have good times when we camp. It was about 3 or 4 years ago. We had just gotten our little pop-up camper we bought down here in Boise. I lived in Garden Valley at the time. And we were up in the McCall area, and my son was getting into the teenage years, and as you know, teenagers like to sleep. Right? Well, we're waiting to do things, and we're wanting him to get up, and he's just sleeping. And I was like, I got the perfect idea. And so we whispered amongst us that were still awake, Seth and Grace and Liz and myself. Next thing you know, Liz says, "Oh my gosh, it's a bear!" And she starts running, and the kids scream, and they start running, and I run. And next thing we see, and we run over, and then we stop, and we see the pop-up camper. We're moving all over the place. And next thing you know, Tyler comes flying out in his boxers. Why would you run out if there was a bear? But he ran out of there. And we were laughing and laughing and laughing. And he's like, he was so afraid. He was always afraid that a bear was going to get him when we were camping. For the longest time. And now the day had come where one was actually in the camp, he thought. And it was good. It was a good joke. It was a good joke. But camping can be fun, yet it can be dangerous, as you know. I know there's a place in Canada you're not even allowed to bring a pop-up camper in. Like one of them, because they have soft sides, and then, well, you could be a meal that night. We have some friends that live over by Yellowstone, and as you may have heard this summer, I believe some people actually were attacked there, and didn't make it after the fact. Yeah, not so good. Not so good. Bad things about camping also. You like camping or don't like camping? There were some people in the Bible that went camping for quite a while. You could imagine camp for like 40 years. How'd you like to camp for 40 years? And not just with your family or a little church friend, but to camp with like 2 million people. Oh, never mind. Right? 2 million of your closest, not closest friends. Right.
No showers, right?
Yeah, there were no showers at this time. They didn't have little tents that zipped up. You could keep the critters out, all this. They didn't have that kind of stuff. And so, turn with me quickly. I want to show you something in here. Numbers. Numbers. People don't often turn to the book of Numbers. But they were camping. What's that?
What page is that?
What page?
What number?
Yeah, mine is like page 98. Mine is 98. Actually, it's Numbers chapter 21. There we go.
21?
Yeah. Numbers 21. Beginning of verse 5. Now these people are camping, and they're not liking it too much. All right, that's kind of the preface here. They are not liking camping at all, actually. And they came where they had lots of food, and they had lots of great things, and they were comfortable. But you know, when you're camping, things aren't just the same as being at home. And so they wanted to go back. And they didn't like the food. They didn't like the drink. They just didn't like it. And so, which brings us to our verse here. Numbers 21:5, which says, "And they began to speak against God and Moses. 'Why have you brought us out of Egypt to die here in the wilderness?' They complained. 'There's nothing to eat here and nothing to drink, and we hate this horrible manna.' So the Lord sent poisonous snakes among the people, and many were bitten and died." Nice, right? Yeah.
What's so funny?
You guys have a sick sense of humor. Many were bitten and died, and everybody laughed. Oh, good for them. All right. Then the people came to Moses and cried out, "We have sinned by speaking against the Lord and against you. Pray that the Lord will take away the snakes." So Moses prayed for the people. Then the Lord told him, "Make a replica of a poisonous snake and attach it to a pole. All who are bitten will live if they simply look at it." So Moses made a snake out of bronze and attached it to a pole. Then anyone who was bitten by a snake could look at the bronze snake and be healed. Camping with God. Camping with God. Interesting enough, during this time, and at least earlier, there's a cloud that, as we know, covered them during the heat of the day so that they would stay cool, and then there was fire at night that would keep the critters away, and they'd be warm. He was giving them food. He was giving them water. He was giving them everything that they needed. Oh, they had everything that they needed, but they complained. And that's what I was this last week, a complainer. Poor me. Whiny whine. They told me for the last 3 weeks I was supposed to be moving into my house. Anytime someone sees me and says, "So did you close?" "Tomorrow." "Are you closing?" "Tomorrow." Next day comes, "Tomorrow." Next day comes, "Tomorrow." Tomorrow. And normally I'm like, it's all going to work out, everything. But I let some little seeds start to grow and fester in there and began to complain in ways that I don't normally complain, which affected my whole, my space, my aura, everything. Now, I don't know if you ever found yourself doing that, found yourself in a situation where you complained or murmured or were angry or whatever it was, but that's where these people were at. Pretty normal. Pretty normal. And if you can imagine camping all the time and not having the same things, eating the same little bread every day, just drinking water every day, that's all you had, might not be the best. So I'm not dogging on them, although God was providing for them. Reminds me of a time I went to Georgia. They say the devil went down to Georgia. And he was looking for a soul to steal. He was in a bind and way behind and willing to make a deal. That's right. Well, I made it down to Georgia one day. And another camping story, and some friends asked me to go backpacking. It's the first time I'd ever gone backpacking. I was like, sure, I'll go. I was in the military. I camped all over the place. Not a problem, I'll go. They're like, and I was like, where are we going? They're like, we're going to Devil's Mountain. Why would you go to Devil's Mountain? That's what I asked myself later. So we're on our way to Devil's Mountain. And it was about a 2.5-hour hike. It wasn't bad. We get to the top, and it was awesome. You could just see out forever. And there's not really big mountains in Georgia, at least for that, but it was cool. You were up high, and you could see, and we looked around, and then saw this cloud in the distance. And it was a black cloud. And it soon began to become very cold. And it started to rain. And I was like, oh, great. Well, I wasn't quite prepared for this camping trip. Wasn't quite prepared. I grabbed my little backpack that I had. It was all about this big, and I grabbed the quickest sleeping bag I could find, and I stuffed it in there. Grabbed a little food, grabbed my water bottle, and a flannel shirt because it's kind of summer out. It's in the fall. Had no idea it was about to snow. And so it began to snow. Fortunately, there was a building up there that they used during the Civil War that had great big windows on each side, but the wind would just kind of blow through there, and we were walking around trying to stay warm, and I just was not prepared. And so as it got dark, we started, we huddled around the little burner things and just, trying to stay warm, drinking hot chocolate and stuff, which keeps you awake, and at least keeps me awake. And snowing, the snow's coming in the room, and I'm like, all right, I need to, I'm going to go outside and pray for a little bit. So I'm praying, and the moon is out, and the snow's flying, and I'm like, God, I don't know how I'm going to stay warm tonight, but I know you can keep me warm. It's all good. And so I went back and looked in there, and they were already all zipped up. They were in those little money bags, and it was all covered up, and they're all laying. They looked so comfortable. I was like, oh, I'm going to get mine. Well, I don't have a mummy bag. Actually, I accidentally grabbed one of the little kids' bags. Not good. That went up to about right here.
About 40 degrees.
Not good. And so it's all frayed at the top, and I'm like, this is not going to work too well. And so I got in. It's about right to here, and I don't have a pillow, I don't have anything like that. So I have a brilliant idea, though. I was like, I'm going to use my water bottle one of the Merdian water bottles, the old ones, you know, they're like big at the end and they go in the middle. Wrap it up in my flannel shirt that I have. I have a thin flannel shirt. And I would use that as my pillow. And I would just kind of tuck it in, and I laid there. And I laid there until I felt something. And I was like, there's something on me. And someone else goes, ah! Oh! And then I hear this, here come these mice. Right? These mice come out. Now, I'm not too much into mice. All right, they're okay from a distance. I'm not like going to jump like an elephant or anything like that. But last night I was at Rochelle's house, okay, and they have rats, okay, and these rats were like crawling on us and stuff. They put them on your head, they're crawling all over, and I was just like, ugh, kind of freaking out, big long tails, and yeah, not into that. And they're like, oh, they're just mice, they're mice, it's okay. But make sure you have your bag zipped up or they'll try to crawl in with you to stay warm. I don't have a zipper on top. I don't have anything like that. I'm like, this is not good. So I'm fighting off the mice, and I'm laying there and I'm trying to get warm, and it's not working too well. And then I feel something on my head. Yeah, well, it was wet. I failed to close the water bottle completely. And so now my shirt was soaking wet. That was my pillow. I know. And my camping experience wasn't too good. And so the shirt's wet. And I'm like, this is not where I'm cold now at this point. And I start to get angry. I'm like, all right, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I was like, oh, I have another bright idea. And I'll take the shirt and I'll put it over me. I put the shirt over me from this section here, but it was wet. And so every time I breathed, it was like, I don't know if you ever put styrofoam up to your mouth or face when you try to breathe. Not styrofoam, but saran wrap. It's just like, every time I breathed in, the shirt would go. And I was like, no, this is not working. It was a terrible camping trip. Terrible camping trip, invaded by mice. But now imagine, it's dark, you're sleeping in a tent where it's all open, and in come snakes. In come snakes. And they begin to bite. And they're poisonous snakes. When we first moved to Salmon, my wife was walking with a friend, and she was walking back to their house, and I think you just about stepped on a snake, didn't you? Rattlesnake. Right there. But in Salmon, they know how to take care of stuff. And so her friend went out and grabbed a shotgun. Boom! Just laid waste to that thing. They didn't have a shotgun way back then, so you weren't just unloading on these things. And I remember elk hunting one time, and I was climbing up a mountain, and I was literally climbing up the mountain, and next thing you know, there's a snake right there. Just a rattlesnake staring right at me. I'm like, move away. And I was able to get away. These people were not. They were not able to get away. And snakes were in the camp, and they were biting, and people were dying. They were biting, and people were dying. If they thought their situation was bad before, it's much worse now. And doesn't that normally happen like that? Like, oh, this is bad, and then something else happens?